I just got back from the 16th Annual Water Conference in Lisbon, Portugal. And this is a conference that was started by Dr. Gerald Pollack. And so if that name sounds familiar to you, he is the individual who coined the term exclusion zone water, or EZ water, that I talk about so much. It's just absolutely one of my favorite lenses of how to view health in the human body is through the lens of the EZ water. And every year for the past 16 years, or took a couple of years off because of COVID, but almost every year for the past 16 years, he's gotten together a group of scientists and researchers and clinicians from all over the world who are passionate about water. It's called the physics, chemistry, and biology of water, right? So you have cross-disciplinary researchers. This is unusual because typically when we talk about water, a physicist will talk about it through the lens of physics. A quantum physicist will talk about it through the lens of quantum physics. A chemist will talk about it through the lens of chemistry or biochemistry. And what we have here is a beautiful melting pot of so many different disciplines coming together to share what they have learned and share their passion for water. And I was so honored to be a guest speaker this year. So I was a speaker. I got to speak on day one this year, and it was just a huge honor. I spoke on the lens of how water made by the mitochondria really truly becomes our true intracellular hydration. And that hydration then becomes exclusion zone water. And it's a battery of energy that our cells use to operate. And I really brought in the concept of light as well, in terms of how light actually can enhance mitochondrial water production or inhibit it. How appropriate circadian signaling can either enhance mitochondrial water production, or how circadian rhythm dysfunction can inhibit it. So it was just fun to kind of bring light into the conversation with water, and it was so well received. It's just a lovely group of people. And so I just kind of wanted to talk a little bit about my experience there and what I learned. First off, the conference started with a woman who is part of Masaru Emoto's lab. And for those of you who don't know the name Masaru Emoto, I highly recommend you check out his books. He wrote books such as The Hidden Messages in Water. And what he did was he realized that water was responsive, right? Water was basically an antenna for energy and emotions and thought. And so he took water crystallography, flash frozen pictures of water essentially, and found water crystals, and the crystals that would form that looked beautiful and coherent and just very symmetrical and organized were formed in response to words of love and gratitude and peace and joy. Whereas if he exposed the water to words of hatred or loathing or anger or frustration, the water molecules failed to form together into these beautiful coherent crystals. And so Masaru Emoto has since passed, but he has left a legacy, in my opinion, that is continuing today with research. And the woman who came, Akiko, came, and she kicked off the conference with a beautiful song. Traditional Japanese songs, just describing water. And by the end of the start of the conference, we were all arm in arm, swaying side to side. You have some of the most, maybe more stoic researchers, and everyone's just, arm in arm, just feeling the vibration and loving this vibration of water and the love that's in the room. And so I knew I was in the right place at that moment, because when you're with people who understand water, they understand emotions and love and gratitude and peace, compassion, and joy. Because we know that if our body is literally 99% water molecules, basically by molecular count, and that water is responsive, if that water is an antenna and responding to the information that my body is presenting it, if I present it with love, think about how those water molecules are going to organize to help bring my body into coherence. And so it was just such an amazing way to start the conference. And I was blessed too, because I got to meet some colleagues of mine in real life, like Dr. Catherine Clinton. She was sitting next to me. She's got such a beautiful energy. Gina Bria from the Hydration Foundation is just a lovely woman. She was just so kind and welcoming, just such a lovely spirit, lovely soul. I met Sarah Pugh, who is just phenomenal. I've interacted with Sarah a ton, via things like the Quantum Conversations podcast that I co-host with Sarah Kleiner. And in real life, Sarah Pugh is beautiful and lovely and brilliant and just so fun. I mean, I got to see Veda Austin again. We'd met before. And then just some of the most amazing scientists that are presenting on water all across the world. And so who exactly did I learn a lot from? Well, I learned a lot. I learned a gem from every presentation. And mind you, I actually wasn't able to stay for all the presentations. So I'm certain I'm going to be missing some gems that were presented that I'm just not going to be able to share in this video. But first and foremost, I wanted to talk about Konstantin Korotkov. He really is, quote unquote, proving, right, is showing that consuming structured water is beneficial to plants, animals, and humans. And he's done several studies on this. I mean, studies where you'll see a plot of crops, such as tomatoes, being watered with just the local water source versus those that are watered with structured water. And you'll have healthier looking tomatoes, larger tomatoes, a much greater yield of tomatoes. Similarly, they've done experiments with chickens, right? So chickens that were given just the regular water versus structured water, the chickens that were given the structured water looked healthier, did not need the same type of medication requirement that the other chickens are typically given to stay healthy in such a potentially unhealthy environment for chickens. They grew bigger, right? They were just healthier, bigger, more vibrant chickens. And then in humans, it's been studied a lot, both from the physical, but also the mental side of things. We know that drinking structured water, and again, Dr. Korotkov is showing this time and time again, that drinking structured water has the ability to influence our metabolism. So we've seen reductions in body fat mass from consuming structured water regularly. We've seen improvements in HRV, which is a very interesting indicator of how my autonomic nervous system is in balanced response to my environment, right? We want the input of both sides, the sympathetic and parasympathetic. We want them both in this dynamic dance, and HRV reflects that. So if we see increases in HRV, we see improved dancing between both sides of the nervous system. The drinking structured water for this study that I'm referring to is 1 month, improved biomarkers of endogenous detoxification, meaning the body was better equipped to hold toxins, let's say intracellularly or in that extracellular matrix, and flush them out of the body. So there was improved kidney function as well. And so it was fascinating to think, we think that, oh gosh, in order to detoxify, I have to push a detox protocol. Well, could it be that the innate intelligence of the body, when given the correct stuff, such as structured water, is able to do the task for us? So that was fascinating. And then the last thing about this study was they had lots of markers of stress resilience that they were testing. A lot of these markers were in the blood that they were testing. And the markers of stress resilience were interesting because the group that received the structured water, their perceived subjective stress went down drastically and their stress resilience went up drastically. Whereas the control group that wasn't drinking the structured water did not have those same changes. What's even more interesting is that this study, the end of this study, was done during the winter months, the darkest, coldest months of the year in Russia, where the study was held. Meaning that, typically, those of us who live in these northern latitudes, come December, January, February, we're, a lot of us aren't just feeling great, right? We're not, it's like, yeah, okay, I'm ready for the spring. It would be easy to have more stress resilience and less stress and more energy if this study was done, say, in May, as the spring was blooming, or June, warmer temperatures. But to have those results in the middle of the winter says a lot about how structured water can affect stress resilience, essentially, and perceived stress levels. So, and so that was such an honor because Dr. Korotkov, for those of you who don't know, he's invented something called the BioWell camera, which is a GDV camera, which stands for gas discharge visualization. Essentially what we know, and what the ancients have known as well, I mean, this isn't anything new, is that surrounding our body are is this plasma energy field that we can't physically see, right? I can't see it, touch it. I actually, ever since massage therapy school, I've been able to, if I have the correct concentration and a white background, I can see people's auras, at least the first little layer. But typically this is not something that we see on a daily basis. However, this GDV camera, called the BioWell camera, is able to take a picture of someone's aura and the layers and the robustness and the vitality, which is defined as Is it completely intact around the organism? Is it vibrate? Is it, reaching out almost like rays of sunshine? Is it reaching out and extending out to the space outside of the body? And so when an energetic body is depleted, that is represented also in the physical body. So remember, the field informs the physical, and the field is information about the physical as well. And so then when we give structured water to individuals and do the before where they have a depleted energy field, give them structured water to consume, time and time again, Dr. Karakov has shown that their energy field extends out and completely fills itself back in. It's quite a significant change before and after when looking at it through the lens of this GDV camera or Kirlian photography. And so very, very fascinating stuff. So, that was Dr. Krakow. Loved it. It was wonderful information, such an honor to be listening to him. One of his colleagues, Vladimir Voykov, they both wrote a book together. I believe it's called The Emerging Science of Water. Great little book on water. And so Vladimir also presented, and he was talking about high dilutions. There's a lot of information or a lot of presentations about basically water memory, how we can dilute something X number of times until the physical substance is no longer present in the water, yet the water still has an impact, whether it's on a cell tissue culture or whether that water is given to animals or whether it's given to humans, right? This is the principle of homeopathy. So again, this isn't anything new, but what we're really starting to do is recognize how many dilutions? Why is there a difference between some dilutions actually being more biologically active than others? And so, just fascinating information to look at. And just, I love the fact that research is going in this direction because my nerd brain, I want to know, I kind of want to know what's going on there. But what was the most fascinating for me, and I've known this since the work of Luc Montagnier, which was published several years ago, but which I won't go into right now. But we know that in order for water, high dilutions of water, where the physical substance is no longer present in the water, a couple of things are needed for water to hold the geometric pattern, the vibrational information of that substance. One is succussion, shaking, right? We need some vigorous shaking in order for the water to hold the information. And then also a background of the Schumann resonance is also needed. So there you go, right? Fabulous to know that Earth's Schumann resonance really truly helps water hold memory. And it, not the case. If you don't have that background resonance, the transfer of information into the dilution transfer of information does not occur. So that was there. Let me think, who else? Someone who really, really blew my mind was someone new, who I had never met before, never heard about her. An amazingly lovely human being. Her name is Gita Ben David, and she actually was using sound, certain vocalizations. One of the things that what she calls the hung song. And what Gita has developed is this method essentially of projecting this sound, this vocalization, either into your own body with intention, or she's also trained people to project it into other people's bodies to heal things even such as tumors. And one of the most mind-blowing things for me was to see in real time. There was a video in real time that showed Gita and one of her colleagues in a hospital room or in a doctor's office, essentially, where they were in one room communicating with the doctor who was with the patient. This patient had a breast tumor of 3 centimeters. And this doctor had an ultrasound that was visually seeing the tumor itself. And as Gita and her colleague directed with intention and sound this energy to this woman's breast, the tumor would shrink. It would go from 3 centimeters to 2 centimeters to 1.4 centimeters to the point where at the end of the session, which took about 70 minutes, the tumor was no longer present. And what Gita's hypothesis is, and I firmly uphold this with her, is that through the water is the receiver of both the sound and the intention. And through things like destructive interference and or constructive interference, depending on how the sound is directed and utilized, you can make physical changes to the body like that. And she teaches this as well. So if you're interested, Gita Ben David would be who you would look up. She's a lovely, lovely person. I also really enjoyed Veda's presentation. Veda talked differently than when I have heard her previously. It had to be a little bit shorter. These were shorter presentations. We had 30 minutes to talk. Like I had 30 minutes to basically get across this concept of mitochondria and circadian rhythm and water production and light influencing. And I mean, it's a lot to cover. But what Veda really did was she laid out the repeatability of her hydroglyphs. For those of you who don't know Veda, Veda Austin has created a technique called water crystallography, which I use personally here. It's been a fun thing for me to experiment with and explore. Essentially, you take a petri dish. I'm not going to give her technique away. I know she has courses that you could get on that, but you take a petri dish with a little bit of water, you put it in the freezer for a certain amount of time, and you can also then expose that water prior to freezing to different influences. And she has literally a record, I think she said, of 50,000 of these experiments. And so what she's realized is that water has almost like a symbolic language. It can organize images in this water. When it freezes, just as its initial freeze in the water, it can form these images that are repeatable. So she repeatedly showed that, when she played Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven to the water would design a staircase in it. She repeatedly showed that when you give the message of marriage, the water would show a ring, and sometimes the ring would even have a little diamond bubble on top of it. And so she repeated these many times. And so the repeatability of this was fascinating because you can see how water responds. It's really like almost like almost looks like coding, the way the water kind of organizes itself in response to the various inputs that she and other people who are doing her technique around the world are continuing to discover. And so that repeatability is key, right? Especially to a room of scientists, because, one or two, it's like, oh, that's interesting, but it could just be an anomaly. It could just be, yeah, that's fun. That's fun and all, but really, does that tell us anything? But when she shows us these grids of like essentially 40, 50 images of it being the same, and how she is experimenting with this to have more control in how the water is responding and how she's presenting it. I mean, it's just taking this information about water being a neutral observer, or water being this neutral antenna and is responding to its energy and information in its environment to the next level, right? This repeatability is very, very key. So loved Veda's presentation, love her energy. She's just beautiful. And there's so many more. I mean, I'm not going to talk a lot more because, but there was people there. There was an individual named Glenn Ryan. He was, he really strongly influenced my work as a clinician a long time before, probably 10 years ago, at least by now, with his studies, which showed that intention influenced DNA, improved how the DNA was wound or unwound to optimize health and vitality. So he was there and was lovely to interact with. The woman who coined the term biofield, Dr. Beverly Rubrick, was there. She, again, amazing, just an amazing person with such an outside the box thinking, which I love. I love people who are willing to push the envelope a little bit, even if it means they have to get funding from somewhere else, a non-traditional source or things like that. And what she's really experimenting with and exploring is how non-native EMFs are impacting our biofield. And therefore that biofield then informs the physical through the water. I'm firmly on board with this. I see this all the time. When we improve the vibrational quality in our environment, whether it's through minimizing non-native EMFs, changing the news that we have on, our emotional states, when we improve the field, we improve the physical. And I truly believe that water is the receiver of that information and changes the tissue state, changes the membrane accordingly. So yeah, I mean, it's just a lovely, lovely place to be and to just interact with people. So if ever you have the chance to go to the water conference, I highly recommend it. Just nice to speak the same language as people, nice to have people who are just as passionate about water, and just such a kind-hearted, loving environment. So I am so, so grateful. And yeah, I'll talk to you next time.